In 2008, Pioneer launched the Middle Cities Initiative, and this initiative is an effort to bring together 14 cities and look at how we can support them in revitalizing their economies and face some of the challenges that they have in common. A very neat part of this initiative is the community involvement piece of it. We have talked with community leaders, business owners, residents, big employers, and we have brought them in focus groups and asked them how they would measure the performance of their city. And if you think about it, I mean, at Pioneer we could have come up with a series of benchmarks that we thought were the right ones, and then do the data research for those benchmarks, and that would be our product. But we really thought that what made sense was to ask people who live in these cities, who work there, how they would measure the performance of their city. What does success mean to them? And at the beginning it was really interesting. People would stare at us and go like, what do you mean measuring the performance of the city? You know, as you would measure the performance of a business usually, the concept of measuring performance in municipalities in some parts of the state is a rather new idea. Oftentimes when you see the data that the municipality generates, it's really department focused. So you don't have a lot of data that speaks to how the recipients of municipal services are seeing the performance of their city. So we had 8 focus groups in 8 communities across Massachusetts, and we asked people 4 questions. We asked them, how can you tell if your city is safe? To start a conversation around benchmarks for public safety. We also asked them, how effective are your city's public schools in educating their students? And that question started a conversation around performance measurement for public education. We then asked people, how do we know if your city's economy is growing? And that is a very interesting one, because usually when we talk about economic development, people don't usually translate that immediately into jobs of business creation. So the way we phrased the question really allowed us to have a conversation with folks around how can they tell that the city is growing in its economy. And finally, we asked people, how can you tell if your city is fiscally healthy? And this was definitely a more challenging one, but it was very interesting to see that people measured in the people who were a little bit more savvy measured the fiscal health of their city on the usual benchmarks like bond rating and rainy day funds, but other people really measure the fiscal health of the municipality in terms of how fast they deliver the services or the quality of the services themselves. Close to 160 people participated in this effort. We had 8 community meetings with an average attendance of 13 people per meeting. And we had a wide variety of people present in this effort. We had people coming from the nonprofit sector. Close to 50% of the people who came were representing nonprofits. We had people coming from the business sector as well. 32% of them were coming from business owners of big employers. We had residents, community leaders. So a lot of sectors of the population were represented during these meetings. And also we made sure that the people who came represented different ages and also different ethnic groups, to really have different groups represented at the table. And the results were amazing. We had close to 600 suggestions on how to measure the performance of municipal government. And we also had the Worcester Regional Research Bureau help us mediate these conversations to ensure that the results were unbiased. Once we collected all these benchmarks, it was Pioneer Institute's job to start collecting data that corresponded to those benchmarks. But first, we looked at our list and started analyzing which were the benchmarks that were coming more often, and created a list of the most common or the most popular benchmarks across the state. We asked academia and experts in different fields to go over the benchmarks and to tell us, do these benchmarks tell us something? Do they really measure municipal government, the performance of municipal government? Then we presented the benchmarks to the mayors of these municipalities where we held the community meetings. And we asked them, like, would this help you would this help you manage your city better? And we got a lot of great feedback from them. Once we finalized the list of the most popular benchmarks and the most recommended ones, we started the data collection. And the bulk of the data comes from state agencies, and some of the data comes also from federal agencies. So it's fairly unbiased. And now we are moving to our different phase, and the result of all this data collection is Mass City Stat, which is a website where we're going to show all the benchmarks and all the corresponding data in an online format. And in this website, citizens are going to have access to data for their municipality, to know how their city has been performing over time, and also to compare the city to other cities that are similar and are facing similar challenges across the state. So this becomes a very good tool for citizens to hold the government accountable and know what's going on with the taxes that they're paying. On the other hand, Mass City Stat becomes a good tool for municipal leaders who need data for the decision making. And this website allows them to identify areas of challenge where the city is not performing really well, and it also helps them identify areas of opportunity and to highlight areas where the city is doing really well. So in the end, when municipalities and municipal leaders can identify best practices, they have the data to back up the results.